Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be diving into one of the absolute most intuitive and foundational concepts in machine learning, K-nearest neighbors, or just KNN for short. Whether you're a college student getting into Python, a data science enthusiast, or you're just looking to really solidify your grasp on supervised machine learning, this is the perfect place to start. KNN is elegant, it's highly effective, and honestly, it forms the bedrock of so many systems we interact with every single day. Okay, let's just dive right into this by imagining you've just moved to a brand new city. You haven't really explored much yet, but you want to figure out the general vibe of your specific block. How would you actually do that? Well, you'd probably figure it out simply by observing the people living right next door to you, right? If your closest neighbors are quiet families, you'd safely assume the block is quiet. If they're college students throwing loud parties every night, you'd assume it's a loud block. You are making a prediction based entirely on proximity. And you know what? This simple human logic is exactly how the K-nearest neighbors algorithm operates. And this brilliantly illustrates how KNN works as what we call a lazy learning algorithm. Now, lazy in computer science definitely doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it skips a formal, eager training phase. Unlike other models that spend hours and hours crunching data to build this complex mathematical rule beforehand, KNN simply relies on its memory of historical data to make decisions on the fly. It stores all the training instances in a giant lookup table and literally just waits. It postpones doing any real computational work until a new, unknown test instance is actually evaluated. So picture this exact moment of evaluation. Imagine a new, completely unclassified data point, let's call it P, sitting right in the middle of our graph. It basically looks out at its surrounding neighbors to figure out if it belongs to Class A, Class B, or Class C. That K in K-nearest neighbors simply stands for the number of neighbors point P decides to consult. If K equals 3, it looks at the 3 closest data points. If K equals 5, it looks at the 5 closest. It essentially draws a conceptual circle around itself, captures those nearest historical points, and uses their established identities to figure out its own. Now, depending on the nature of the target we're trying to predict, this supervised learning task uses KNN in one of two distinct ways: classification or regression. For classification, we're predicting discrete categorical outcomes. Think of figuring out if an email is spam or not spam. In this case, KNN simply takes a majority vote among its nearest neighbors. If most of the neighbors are Class A, boom, our new point becomes Class A. But for regression, where we are predicting continuous numeric values, like forecasting the price of a house, the algorithm calculates the mathematical average of the numeric values of those nearest points. It's the exact same core logic, just a slightly different way of combining the neighbors' answers. Moving on to section 1, measuring distance between points. Because to make this work, the algorithm has to mathematically figure out who those closest neighbors actually are. To find those neighbors in a high-dimensional data set, the algorithm uses various mathematical similarity measures. The most common one you'll see is Euclidean distance, which calculates the standard straight-line spatial relationship between 2 points. But, depending on the data, we have a few other tools in the toolbox. For example, if we're dealing with discrete, non-numerical attributes, like text categories or genetic sequences, we'd probably use something like the Hamming distance. Instead of measuring spatial geometry, Hamming distance simply sums up the number of non-matching features. If 2 data points have completely different categories across the board, their Hamming distance is super high, meaning they are definitely not neighbors. Section 2, the Voronoi tessellation. Let's see what happens to our data space when we take this algorithm to its absolute extreme. So if we use a nearest neighbor classifier where we set K to exactly 1, we create what is known in mathematics as a Voronoi tessellation. In this setup, the entire data space is sharply divided into these distinct, geometric, cell-like regions. Every single location within a given polygon is closer to the one specific historical data point inside that polygon than to any other point in the entire dataset. It is a fascinating visual representation of just how rigidly the algorithm can carve up a decision space when it strictly copies the single closest past example. Section 3, the cost of memory. Now, all of this conceptual convenience comes with a massive catch regarding how much data the system actually has to juggle. Remember how we said KNN is a memory-based, instance-based learner? Well, that means it doesn't just learn a simple rule and throw the raw data away. It literally must hold on to every single historical example. This means its computational time and space complexity are directly proportional to the size of the entire training set. In computer science terms, this results in a massive memory cost of O of n. Every single time a new point needs classification, the system has to scan and calculate the distance to every stored point. If you have a dataset with a billion records, it's going to have to do a billion calculations just to make one single prediction. To fix this heavy computational bottleneck, we could actually use an incredibly smart optimization method called condensed nearest neighbor. The goal here is to radically shrink the dataset without losing any accuracy. It does this by identifying and throwing out redundant historical instances that sit safely deep inside a class region. Think about it. If a data point is totally surrounded by points of its exact same class, its absence won't change any boundary decisions at all. So condensed nearest neighbor tosses it out, keeping only the crucial boundary points, the instances that actually define the edges between different classes. This drastically lowers our memory usage from high to low, focusing computational power only where the classes actually meet. Section 4. Avoiding biased neighborhoods. Now that we deeply understand the mechanics, we really need to address the ethical implications of this approach. Take a look at this quote from the World Journal of Advanced Research and Reviews. It highlights a profound ethical vulnerability in lazy learning algorithms. We so often think of machines as these perfectly objective math engines, but if your system relies entirely on pulling historical cases to make future decisions, any human bias, prejudice, or historical inequality embedded in that data will directly lead to unfair predictions today. The algorithm assumes the past was correct and mathematically enforces it on the future. When models optimize purely for overall accuracy without considering fairness, they can unintentionally perpetuate severe social inequalities. For instance, facial recognition systems have historically misclassified women and people of color at significantly higher rates, simply because they were underrepresented in the original training neighborhoods. Similarly, predictive tools used in hiring, bank lending, and healthcare can generate shockingly unfair predictions because the historical data they're referencing was prejudiced to begin with. And to make matters worse, because many of these AI systems function as opaque black boxes, it becomes incredibly difficult to audit exactly why a biased prediction was made, which severely undermines transparency. So, I want to leave you with this final, vital thought. As we continue to build and deploy systems that judge our future opportunities based entirely on the proximity of our past actions, how do we ensure those algorithms aren't just efficiently memorizing our worst societal mistakes? KNN is a powerful, beautiful mathematical tool, absolutely, but it requires us to be incredibly vigilant about the neighborhoods of data we ask it to live in. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.